The pandemic has impacted all of us, yet some have been hit harder than others.
Lower-income individuals, notably those living in developing countries, have faced job losses, income reductions, and increased exposure to health risks.
Government interventions to support the poor proved critical. At the same time, these interventions have stretched public finances, making future tax increases all but inevitable.
So the question now is, how do you go about raising taxes in a way that supports an inclusive recovery?
COVID-19 brought into sharp focus that wealth is increasingly concentrated at the top, and inequality is rising in many countries.
And tax policies have a role to play, because governments will need to continue supporting at-risk groups while asking for a larger contribution from those who are doing well.
But raising taxes has its challenges. Taxes tend to reduce economic efficiency, meaning that they can be harmful to long-term growth by affecting decisions to work, to save, to consume, and to invest.
We argued that it is possible to raise tax revenues through policies that support the economic recovery while also protecting the most vulnerable in society. As we'll see, if you design tax reforms right, you can relax the trade-off between efficiency and equality.
This brings us to some of the issues that stand out in developing countries. Our research draws from our extensive engagement with countries on tax policy, something like 90 missions a year. These engagements have helped us learn quite a bit about some of the specific issues that developing countries face.
First of all, the obvious place to raise taxes to finance progressive social programs is where they currently generate the most revenue, and that's indirect taxes, at least in the short term. Take a look at this chart. In the average advanced economy, such as the US, Germany, or Australia, most tax revenues come from direct taxes. So mostly taxes on income from individuals and businesses.
Contrast that with developing countries, where roughly 2/3 of the tax take comes from indirect taxes. So mostly through a broad-based consumption tax, like a value-added tax, trade taxes, and additional levies on products such as alcohol, tobacco, and fuel.
But indirect taxes can be unpopular because they tend to be viewed as regressive. In other words, in proportion to income, they hit our lowest income individuals the most. But it is important to view the fiscal system as a whole. Yes, look at the tax, but also look at the spending.
We need to remember that the most effective way of addressing inequality is supporting the poor through social spending programs. But these programs need to be paid for from taxation. Our key message here is that improving the design of indirect taxes offers a first avenue for developing countries wishing to maintain or expand social programs. But what about reforms to direct taxation, like income taxes?
Well, direct taxes can be powerful redistributive tools to address the high concentration of income and wealth among the rich. And this is the kind of untapped potential in developing countries. The easiest way to ensure that affluent individuals contribute more is through a progressive personal income tax.
To achieve this, many countries would benefit from bringing more people into the tax, or taxing more those that already contribute. This necessitates better enforcement to detect and address cases of tax evasion, as well as policy reforms, such as special regimes for professionals and small business owners.
Taxing more those that already contribute can take various forms, such as raising taxes or limiting the use of deductions and credits. But there are limits to raising taxes, A very high top tax rate would discourage work and education and may lead to avoidance and evasion.
The corporate income tax is another important component of the direct tax system. But the debate about how this tax can help reduce inequality is ongoing. For example, is the corporate income tax borne by the owners through lower returns, by the workers through lower wages, or even by the consumers through higher prices? The answer is not so straightforward.
Despite this uncertainty, developing countries would benefit from reforms to deal with emerging issues, such as increased tax competition or tax avoidance by multinationals. International coordination, for example, with regards to the minimum tax, is key to mitigate these risks. Also key is the need to review tax exemptions to attract foreign investment, such as tax holidays.
Direct taxes can also target wealth instead of income. This is a potentially powerful tool because wealth is even more unequally distributed than income. But international experience suggests that wealth taxes can be quite challenging to implement, mostly due to evasion and asset valuation problems.
Alternative forms of wealth taxes, which are more targeted, such as recurrent taxes on real property, can however be exploited more fully in most developing countries.
While increasing taxes may be inevitable post-pandemic, we believe that there are ways of doing so that protect the poorest among us while ensuring greater contributions from the better off.